So this video is being filmed within 24 hours of the results of the 2024 US presidential election. But worry not, this is not a video on politics or taking sides. It is going to be a relevant video for years to come on how we're able to navigate reconciliation and communication with people that we're either feeling judged by or we are judging ourselves. So let's go ahead and start with a quote by Martin Luther King Jr. People fail to get along because they fear each other. They fear each other because they don't know each other. And they don't know each other because they have not communicated with each other. And one more quote. There is some good in the worst of us and some evil in the best of us. When we discover this, we are less prone to hate our, quote, enemies. So I'm someone who does not actually use the word enemy in my vocabulary, ever. I much prefer to live by the philosophy summarized by the quote by Mitch Albom. Strangers are just family you have yet to come to know, which I absolutely adore. And I really started living the truth of in my mid-teen years after I came out of the closet. That was the day of MySpace, and the online forums were everywhere, and I would often go on to controversial online forums of people who did not like gay people, and I would befriend the individuals who had different beliefs than I. And over time of just learning about one another and getting to know each other's different viewpoints, a friendship did begin to blossom. And I wasn't looking to change anyone's views. I was really just looking to understand why people believed certain ways that demonized me as a gay man. And just in the process of my curiosity of getting to know them, they ended up getting to know me, and we were able to touch the heart of each other's humanity. And ever since then, that's just kind of the approach that I've learned to live my life by. And years later, I found many other individuals who approached life in that way. Thich Nhat Hanh and his fantastic, beautiful activism work coming out of the Vietnam War and promoting peace on all sides of the equation. He's a wonderful example and was actually nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize by Martin Luther King Jr. for his peace movement. And another individual that not a lot of people have heard about is actually Daryl Davis, who's a blues musician and a Black man who actually would befriend KKK members. And over the course of his lifetime, by befriending KKK members, dozens actually gave up their hoods just by becoming his friend and seeing his humanity and realizing that the underlying racism or the fear or the hate that was propelling their beliefs was a moot point. And so I wanted to share all this because given the whole controversies right now in America with the election and just the divide that we're seeing politically between people, socially, politically, religiously. There's a lot of divides going on. But something I'm concerned by at the very root of it is people deleting each other from one another's lives. And what I mean by that is just based off of someone's religious or political beliefs, in person or online, I'm seeing a narrative of individuals being proud to delete them and publishing this publicly, saying like they're cleansing their friends lists of anyone who disagrees with them or is voting against their belief system. And sometimes these individuals have very, it makes sense to why they're doing this. It's not coming from a place of maliciousness. It's coming from a place of hurt and a place of protection. So I understand why individuals may feel the need to isolate themselves from individuals that they feel hurt from. But the truth is, especially when it comes to voting and differences in religious beliefs and political beliefs, a lot of it does not have its underlying truth in hate towards one another. It may have an underlying truth of fear and a misunderstanding of one another, but generally speaking, there's not a maliciousness. For example, back in the teen years when I was really demonized for being a gay man, either being called a complete abomination that was going to burn in hell for eternity, someone who was going to completely jeopardize the democracy in America if gay marriage was legalized, or corrupt the children, or if they took a scientific approach, who was just a defect. That was great. So when I would befriend individuals who had these beliefs and they saw my humanity, not once was there any actual hate in their heart against me even before they knew me. It was just a lack of understanding. And so what I'm starting to see a lot more and more is people want to be understood first before they're willing to give acceptance towards others and give others the space for understanding. So my approach is I never expect anyone to understand me before they feel that I understand them. Let me repeat that. I never expect anyone to understand me before they feel, emphasis on they feel, that I understand them. And I think that's at the heart of a lot of this is we say that we understand other people, but they may not feel that from us. And so there's this constant ground, this constant not common ground of people not feeling understood, and we kind of just give up. You know, a lot of queer people, queer individuals, again, I'm using this topic a lot just because it's relevant and I know it, they get so fucking tired of explaining queer rights. You know, the whole LGBTQIA plus, you know, the rainbow alphabet that triggers a lot of people, and especially individuals such as myself, we do get exhausted trying to explain why it's important. But like I said, my approach going back from 20 years now has never been to just try and educate people on that. My interest is merely to understand others. My interest is merely to understand you and how you think and what are your concerns. And mine are literally on the back burner. And then once we have that common ground, or at least you feel that I'm a safe person to trust and have a dialogue with, then maybe I'm going to share things that really mean a lot to me, and why I feel the way I feel on certain things that are going on in our country and around the world. And to me, that's how bridges are built, just by caring about one another and touching our humanity and having a genuine interest in each other, even those of us who are quite different. Truth be told, most of my friends have very different political and religious beliefs than I, and I freaking love them dearly, and they are wonderful individuals. So I'm not a fan of this whole isolationist approach that a lot of us are taking, in that we are just creating more and more echo chambers of only surrounding ourselves with people who understand us and we understand them. I think that can be quite damaging and dangerous, and it only creates further division. And I do not believe that punishing other people through non-association is the answer. I think just like how I did when I was a kid, and giving the example of Thich Nhat Hanh and Daryl Davis, who did it on a much wider scale, of crossing those political and religious lines to understand the quote enemy, or not even, they never viewed them necessarily as the enemy, but the other person probably viewed them as the enemy and became friends with them. That's, boy howdy, that's where the magic happens. And I think that's what's really missing right now in the world as a whole. So yeah, I wanted to give a little rant on that. So the next time, if you're someone on social media and you want to delete people from your life just because they voted a certain way or have a different belief system, it's one thing if they're being abusive. Healthy boundaries, yay. But instead, I invite you to get curious. I invite you to have compassion and realize that a lot of times when people vote, they're not even thinking about you, which might be part of the problem that you feel. But when I say they're not thinking about you, they're not thinking about it maliciously. So we want to give each other a lot of grace and space to communicate. So get curious, get compassionate rather than pissed. Um, because the truth is, when we let anger guide us, yeah, it can be a really motivating and fueling force for action and change. But a lot of times when we use anger to do it, we're alienating people in the process rather than building bridges. And that's kind of what got us to this point. Cool. So that was my quick little rant. And now I'm going to take a deep breath. And we're going to segue into the second half of this video, which we're going to be discussing the virtue of reconciliation from my book, Heart of Humanity. Stay tuned. If you made it this far into the video, welcome back. My name is Alaric Hutchinson, aka the Zen Cowboy. And so today, as mentioned, we're exploring the virtue of reconciliation in my book, Heart of Humanity. And so this is on page 107. Virtue 6, the flower of reconciliation. In Indonesia, we have a deep practice of reconciling inner and outer conflicts. It is at the heart of our vow of, quote, do no harm, end quote. However, harm to us is much more than physical. We also observe and reconcile all the ways we create and reinforce suffering mentally, emotionally, and even spiritually. To experience genuine inner peace in a lasting way, our work is continuous because life is continuous. By simply being alive, we are bound to step on thorns, parentheses, harm ourselves, and prick people, parentheses, harm others. Pain happens, but with cultivated clarity, we're able to navigate our narrative and the narrative of others with acute awareness and stable peace. So I really like the stepping on thorns and the pricking others, the harming ourselves and the harming others in that segment, because so much of how we cope with pain and disappointment equates to how much we suffer and we cause other people to suffer. I mean, how often have we been in a bad mood and we spill onto those around us? So I love this whole notion of remembering that peace is a continuous practice because life is continuous, and that this whole art of reconciliation, not only with other people, but reconciling our own emotional harms, is kind of at the crux of our peace practice, so we're not spilling out onto other people. Let's take a breath. The virtue of reconciliation further teaches us why the embodiment of peace is a core theme in Indonesia. We don't cultivate peace only for ourselves, we also cultivate it for others. In our compassion and desire for harmony, we recognize that unless we heal ourselves and learn to speak, work, and exist from a place of peace, we inevitably and accidentally will continue to cause ourselves and others harm. Inner peace, therefore, is synonymous with enlightenment, and enlightened, aka illuminated, way of seeing and being. Let me repeat one sentence from that I really like. We don't cultivate peace only for ourselves, we also cultivate it for others. So I absolutely love this because it kind of ties back to the whole pricking other people analogy I gave. And I like to analyze myself from time to time. I often use myself as a guinea pig. And I noticed years ago that whenever I would come over to my parents' house for dinner, our weekly dinners, and I was in a funky monkey mood, it would end up rippling out onto them and affecting them negatively and maybe making them funky monkeys. But in contrast, when I had a joyous, happy week and I would come over with joyous, happy news and I was bubbly and stuff, it would then ripple out to them and they would kind of match that energy. And so it always seemed like whatever energy I was vibrating at, they would match. And I remember at one point in my life, I just really tried to make a mental note of like, I really want to be someone who embodies happiness, embodies peace, so that others can enjoy it around me as well. And the contrast of that, of just being a complainer and unhappy at all times and seeing how that impacted other people, that is kind of what motivated me into this way of living. And I think we forget this sometimes. I think this is something that is really acute for us to pay attention to. And even years ago, I gave some of my students like the 30 days no complaining practice and what that would look like if you didn't complain for 30 days and how it would change your relationships. So maybe you guys could give that a try if you're interested. But yeah, let me just repeat that one quote one more time. We don't cultivate peace only for ourselves. We also cultivate it for others. Pretty cool stuff. Let's take a breath. When first learning, this virtue is about cleaning up our side of the street. We dissolve the separating energies born of hostile, moralist, and pious thinking by showing up unconditionally with gentle curiosity and compassion. We take responsibility for the harms we create, internally and externally, and we never shy away from uncomfortable conversations that might shine a light on things we may not wish to see. That last part there, I absolutely love. Because let's lean into that for a moment and remember, we can't heal what we don't acknowledge. We can't heal what we don't acknowledge. And going back to my rant at the beginning of this video, I think that is an extra reason why it is so important for us to remain connected with individuals and keep an open dialogue going with individuals who are different than us. Because if we never can get to the point of understanding one another's differences and our individual needs, then how is healing ever going to occur? So this punishment of non-association, you can no longer associate with me, you don't deserve to associate with me because you've harmed me in this way. I know, I understand, like we want to protect ourselves, we want to be surrounded by good vibes all the time. But if we can self-nourish ourselves to the point where we can have our own peace, we make so much more progress in the world if we can still spend energy building bridges rather than just waiting for others to wake up to whatever we want them to wake up to and then come over and knock on our door and come to tea. No, invite them over for tea. Take the time to understand them and then build that bridge of mutual understanding. Love it, love it, love it. Let's take a breath. Okay, so this last paragraph, we're getting a little spicy with the deeper philosophy stuff, so it may not make sense right off the bat, and that is totally okay. That is why I'm here. We can always have a conversation about it one-on-one, and I still wanted to include it though, and it relates to other aspects of the book if you've been reading it. So let's go ahead and dive in and see how it goes. Moreover, the advanced teaching of this virtue is to reconcile opposites. With practice, we begin to perceive life differently, no longer through a discriminatory moralized lens, but through a lens of harmonizing equanimity. Through diligent practice, we eventually see the truth of, quote, interbeing. Thus, we feel on a visceral level that there is no opposing force against us in the universe, and that all things, even those we once perceived as bad, have their purpose. Duality dissolves, hostility dissolves, and opposites are seen as cooperative components instead of opposing forces. The result? We create less chaos and ignorance and more understanding and harmony. We transcend duality through reconciliation. So, yes. All of that is on point, but if it doesn't make sense, that's perfectly okay. That's kind of getting into the deeper teachings of non-duality that some of my students take years to master. So just a quick overview though, the whole duality teaching is, so to break it down, duality is the right, the wrong, the good, the bad, the moralist, pious thinking, in contrast to polarity, which is harm, healing, peace, pain, much more tangible. So when we're always in our thinking mind of good versus bad, right versus wrong, it's really easy to get into thinking that is demonizing other people and condemning them, rather than thinking of it in terms of a more polaristic approach of harm versus healing. Okay, this behavior over here is harmful, but they're not necessarily bad or evil people. It may be just stemming from a lack of understanding. So how can I bridge that gap of understanding? But if we were coming at it from a dualistic standpoint, we would just say, they're wrong, they're bad people, I don't want to associate with them. So moral of the story here is when we're thinking more dualistically, it's a lot easier to not have compassion and to separate ourselves. But when we're looking at life through a more polaristic viewpoint of peace versus pain, we could say, okay, I don't like what I see going on over here, but I also recognize that me separating and punishing others, that's also harmful. And so instead, I don't want to create pain. I want to just create peace. So I'm going to take steps further to cultivate understanding and compassion, to build that bridge. So a lot of stuff, a lot of deep stuff here. And I'll go ahead and just end with this. If any of this is curious to you and you want to dive deeper, I am starting up my student program soon. So you're welcome to reach out. We can either do psychospiritual one-on-one life coaching, or you can get into the studies of Dunisha, where we go on a week-to-week journey through the book. Whatever works for you, I'm here for it, and I love it all. And as always, please go ahead and give it a like, a thumbs up to this video. And since this video was kind of, it's heavy topics we explored, maybe in the comment section, leave below what stood out the most for you, because we covered a lot of ground and I'd be curious to hear. So thank you all so much, and I will see you in the next video. Mwah.